When you empower someone to act on your behalf, an accountant filing taxes, for example, the legal principles are centuries old. But what happens when that someone isn't a person at all, but a piece of software, an avatar, or maybe even a decentralized organization with no single leader? We're going to explore this fascinating collision between ancient legal tradition and our very modern digital reality.
This analysis is based on the works of Professor Vihar Kiskinov.
So here's our roadmap. We'll begin by looking at the shifting landscape, moving from the physical to the virtual world. Then we'll establish a solid foundation by defining what classical representation really is. From there, we'll dive into the digital challenge, explore the new legal frameworks being built to bridge that gap, see how it all works in practice, and then wrap up with the key takeaways.
First, let's set the stage. The fundamental problem here is that our legal systems were designed for a world of paper, of physical signatures, and face-to-face meetings. The virtual world, as you know, operates on a completely different set of principles.
And this is where you can see the profound difference between the two environments. In the material world, legal subjects are people. Data is recorded on paper. Procedures require human interaction. But in the virtual environment, the legal actors can be software agents themselves. Records aren't in filing cabinets, they're entries in electronic registers. And complex procedures can become automated, internal processes within a system. This isn't just a simple translation from one medium to another. It's a fundamental rewriting of the rules of the game.
So, to truly understand how much things are changing, we have to go back to basics. Let's lay out the classical blueprint for legal representation as it has stood for centuries.
At its core, representation is a straightforward concept. One person, the representative, performs legal actions for another person, the one being represented. The absolutely critical point here is that whatever the representative does, the legal consequences, both good and bad, apply directly to the person they are representing. It's as if the represented person acted themselves.
Traditionally, this authority to represent comes from one of three sources. It can be voluntary. You willingly give someone a power of attorney. It can be legal, meaning it's established by law, like a parent automatically representing their child. Or it can be based on a specific legal act, such as a court appointing a guardian for someone. This has been the stable framework for a very long time.
And now, we arrive at the heart of the problem. How do these clear, human-centric categories apply when the representative is nothing more than lines of code? This is the central digital challenge we're facing.
To tackle this, two major legal theories have emerged, and they are philosophically worlds apart. In continental Europe, what's known as the tool theory is dominant. It views software as just an extended arm, the Latin term is longa manu, of the user. The software has no will of its own, it's just a very sophisticated tool, like a hammer or a pen. But in the United States, the electronic agency theory is more prevalent. It grants software kind of limited legal recognition, allowing an autonomous agent's actions to legally bind its owner, even without direct human oversight. So, which is it? Is your trading bot a simple tool or a legally recognized agent? The law is still figuring that out.
And this isn't just abstract theory. We see these new forms of representation everywhere. You have electronic agents like stock trading bots. You have online platforms where a social media manager acts on behalf of a company. You have avatars, which are increasingly seen not just as digital property, but as actual projections of our legal selves. And then you have the really radical concept of DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which are a huge challenge because there's often no central represented person to point to at all.
All of this brings us to the one critical question that legal systems across the globe are wrestling with. If an electronic agent makes a mistake or enters into a disastrous contract, who ultimately is held responsible? Is it the user, the person who wrote the code, or the platform it runs on?
In an effort to find answers, governments are now starting to build a legal bridge from that old world to the new one. The new European framework is a perfect example of this in action.
A key piece of this new legal architecture is a regulation called eIDAS 2.0. It's set to introduce the European Digital Identity Wallet. You can think of this as a highly secure digital passport on your phone. But it does more than just prove who you are. It can also hold officially verified attributes, like proof that you're a company director or that you hold a valid power of attorney for someone else. It's designed to create a single, trustworthy way to establish identity and authority across the entire European Union.
Now, to make a system like this work, the law has to make a very precise distinction. It separates the author of a statement from the holder. The author is the actual person who creates the electronic message.
Think of the accountant typing the tax return. But the holder is the person or company on whose behalf it's all being done, the client. The legal consequences land on the holder, not the author. This separation is absolutely essential for digital representation to function securely.
So how does this official empowerment process actually work? It's a clear, four-step system. First, the authorizer officially grants the power by entering their chosen representative's unique ID into a central electronic register. Second, for security, the authorizer locks this in using a qualified electronic signature, which is the digital equivalent of a legally binding tamper-proof seal. Third, government ministries manage this register to guarantee its integrity. And finally, the result? Any public authority can then perform an instant automated check to confirm that the representative's power is legitimate. No paperwork, no phone calls, no delays.
That might still sound a bit theoretical, so let's walk through a couple of examples to see how these new legal tools will actually function in the real world.
Picture this. An accountant has a client who is traveling overseas. In the old system, this might involve emailing a scanned power of attorney of questionable legal standing. In the new system, the client has already authorized the accountant in the official electronic register. Now the accountant can simply use her own digital ID to log in and file that tax return. The system instantly verifies her authority to act. It's secure, it's fast, and it's legally sound.
Or, looking to the very near future, imagine a daughter needs to get an official certificate from a government portal for her ill father. Using his European digital identity wallet, the father can grant her temporary, specific authority to do just that. She can then use her own wallet to securely access the portal and download the document on his behalf. No paper, no waiting in line, just secure, verifiable, digital empowerment.
So, after covering all of that ground, from centuries-old legal theory to cutting-edge digital frameworks, let's bring it all together and summarize the key takeaways.
First, the very idea of representation is evolving beyond a purely human-centric model to one that has to include digital agents. Second, those two key theories, tool versus agency, are carving out two very different paths for how the law will ultimately treat the actions of software. Third, the European Union is taking a leading role by building a new framework, eIDAS 2.0, to standardize digital identity. And finally, all of this is leading us away from paper-based authorization and towards secure, centralized, and verifiable electronic systems.
This leaves us with one final and perhaps most important question. As our digital and physical lives continue to merge, and as our digital agents begin to act for us more and more, how do we ensure that the laws we create strike the right balance? The balance that protects our fundamental rights while still enabling the incredible innovation that these new forms of representation will unlock.